This is arguably the most known snare drum and stand in the world of drumming, on a book that virtually every drummer has and has had since the 50s. And I'm really, really honored and excited today to introduce everybody to my friend, drummer, survivor, and owner of this drum since Ted Reed and Billy Gladstone themselves have had it, Ken Canty.
Hi.
Ken, welcome.
Thanks.
So Ken, let's start at the beginning. This drum, take us through the life of this drum from Billy Gladstone.
Okay.
Who made the drum, right?
Yes.
Let's take it all the way through so drummers understand how it ended up here.
Sure.
And how it ended up here.
Well, Ted was actually one of Billy's students back in the 30s era, and he was very good friends with Billy Gladstone. So when Billy started making drums for his closest friends, Ted was one of the first people that said, "Hey Billy, I want one of these drums made for me." And see, what happened was, back then, drum heads were made of calfskin heads. So when the orchestra was playing a song, they couldn't really play for, they were 20, 30 minutes long. So instead of picking up the drum and turning and tuning it, he devised this three-way key that you could tune the top head like this.
So you changed the direction of the key, which side you used.
Yeah.
And it tensioned a different lug.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Or he could do both heads at the same time.
The third side.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
Very cool. So it's a three-sided drum key.
Yeah.
So it does top, bottom, and both together.
And this right here, this lever right here was way ahead of its time. That could actually tighten up the toner on top. And so he did a lot of things that were way ahead of his time. This is all Billy Gladstone's patents.
Right. He was a very innovative inventor.
Very innovative.
Well, Modern Drummer featured Ted Reed giving an overview of Billy Gladstone in its 1981. It was October of 81. MD actually featured this. Here we are with the actual drum, and you were a student of Ted Reed's personally, right?
Yes.
So you knew him, met him, studied with him.
Yeah.
As opposed to just using the book.
Right. I was studying with him after I graduated college. From 1982 to 1987, I studied with Ted. He retired down here in Clearwater, Florida. And I had just graduated college, but I knew this guy was so famous retiring down here. I said, "Is there any way I can study with you?" He said, "Well, I'm really retired, but I got my studio upstairs in downtown Clearwater, mainly to sell the books. He had thousands of boxes and a big studio." He said, "I could teach you a little bit, I guess. Every Saturday I'd be there at 10 o'clock, and sometimes I wouldn't even get out of there till 1 o'clock because he had one story after another he had to tell me about. And it was phenomenal."
It's priceless.
Yeah, it was. The main thing about the drum itself was all the things that Billy did. He really didn't really want to take it out and play it. It was more like a museum piece. This is a picture of Billy Gladstone actually giving the drum to Ted Reed back in 1955. And so Ted was so excited that he got this drum on Christmas. And this is a picture of Billy Gladstone, which is actually part of the plaque and part of the book.
He gets this drum, and obviously it was very special to Ted.
Yes.
And he decides he's going to put it on the cover of Syncopation.
Yes.
And then this plaque is the Modern Drummer article we did in that October 81 issue.
Yes.
Ted had it framed, and then you took possession of it. And then, so how did you get the drum? So Ted has it, puts it on Syncopation, keeps it for all these years. He's getting older,
Yes.
near his passing,
Yes.
and you're studying with him, and what happens?
Well, he calls me up out of the blue and says, Ken, I think I only have a few more years left, and I would like to pass some drums down. Would you be interested in buying? And I was a professional drummer at the time, playing a lot of Broadway shows. So naturally, I wanted to buy a Billy Gladstone drum. Who wouldn't? I've had it over 30 years, and now it's time to pass it down to you.
An honor, I can truly say. I grew up on Syncopation. I was first introduced to it by my first drum teacher, Mr. Woolley at Lexington Music Center in Massachusetts when I was 8. And we went through kind of the beginning of the book, and it was, of course, challenging. I was 8 years old, but I could read music, and I could, just work on trying to get through some of it. And then when I started studying with Alan Dawson, very famous drummer and teacher, he had, as a lot of drummers have, he used pages 37, exercise 1, through 44, exercise 8, and these pages, he had hundreds of variations you would practice with those same pages, and you would do on the kit, and you would do all these different limb movements, and you do like a jazz rhythm with your right hand, ting, ting, ding, 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 and hi-hat 2 and 4, and then you use like the short notes on your snare, long notes on your bass drum. Then you would mix it up, short notes on the bass drum, long notes on the snare. And this book had so much potential in how far you could take your drumming vocabulary.
True.
That I studied with Alan for 3 years, and we were only halfway through his curriculum of what this book can actually be capable of teaching you.
Sure.
So how Ted Reed was that far ahead of his time, and the pioneers of the instrument who have taken the book and gone even further with it, like Alan Dawson and others, is really extraordinary. And so what's happened as a result of all of that is this book's helped millions of drummers, and it still does.
Not just drummers, though. That's the reason why he wrote this like he did, because a lot of other instruments use the drum book, and
To understand
syncopation.
how to have rhythmic,
Exactly.
vocabulary.
That's the reason why he sold so many copies, and it was a #1 book at one point.
It still is.
It might be
It's
still
always
be.
in the top 5.
Yeah. And what's so amazing is he knew everybody in the industry too, and everybody called him. I was in with him one day at his house, and Jim Chapin called him up and said, "How you doing?" He just knew everybody. I was a recipient of a lot of stories, and I learned so much about all the music industry and the people that Ted knew and loved. Ted didn't have any kids or children, so what happened was he called me out of the blue one day and said, "Ken, I have all my Billy Gladstone drums." He was smart enough to know back in the 70s and 80s when people were dying, the famous drummers that Billy did one for Gene Krupa, he did one for Buddy Rich, he did one for Shelly Manne, Hal Watson, Viola Smith, then all these other drummers. And once they started dying, Ted would call their wives and say, "I'd like to get your drum from your husband." And that's the reason why he ended up with a bunch of drums. That's all the Billy Gladstone's drums. And I got it right there.